Hey, everybody! Look who's back. That's right, it's Matt. Matthew, welcome back. I didn't use our open because I know you've been out. I hope you've been having a good, summer so far. And
Mhm.
today we're talking World Cup, and I think that's going to be. We've got you and I and a lot of people in this country are very familiar with the the brackets of March Madness, right? Well,
Mhm.
if you were to bracket this, the World Cup, this would be chalk. Okay, I don't think anybody's surprised that these four teams are in the final four. Um, this afternoon, we get to see Kylian Mbappe, possibly the greatest soccer player on the planet at this point in time, playing against a Spanish team that you know talent wise they're not as good, but it's one of those things where we know it. We've seen it in sports where they can um, because of the way they play as a unit very well. And so there's no real superstar, but there is enough solid players that they will drive you nuts. And we just lost Matt for a minute, but that's okay. We'll come back to him in just a second. I promised you guys that I would rate the broadcast teams, and I'm giving Fox um, an A. John Strong and Sue Holden have been, has been Fox's signature World Cup voices. They call the biggest matches. They got good tempo. They got energy, smooth chemistry, a clear understanding of how to elevate the moments without going nuts. Um, their work during the U.S. men's team's knockout run, set the tone for Fox's coverage. Strong's, has that great rising cadence as things begin to move closer and closer to the goal. Uh, my number two team, the Ian Drake, Landon Donovan team. Um, I really think Landon Donovan, who was in the in the studio for a while, is far better as a game analyst than he is as a studio analyst. So he being paired with Ian Drake have been, again, a very nice surprise. And hang on, we'll bring Matt back in. Um, there we go. Matthew, welcome back.
Yeah, sorry, my camera was glitching out, so we're trying just audio this time.
Okay. I was just mentioning that I've been moving, giving starting to give grades to the broadcasters who I've seen, and gave an A to Fox's team. Just mentioning that Landon Donovan, who has been uh, mainly used in studio, is a
Mhm.
much better game analyst than he is a studio guy. And I know that we have seen a lot of um, football and baseball, and you find out that these guys who sit on the dais there and start to talk and try to explain what's going on, like Alexi Lawless and folks like that. Um, it gets old after a while. I mean, Terry Henry has been fantastic. Rebecca Lowe has been outstanding on the pre and post game shows. But what I gotta say is that Landon Donovan is a much better game analyst than he is um, you know, a studio guy, and that happens sometimes. Some of these guys, are they do studio work, but then when they get out and do the heavy lifting, excuse me, of calling a broadcast, Donovan has stepped up, and I think he's done a very nice job.
Yeah, I think you can see that a good comparison is ESPN for college game day for all the many years is they've had one of Chris Fowler or Reese Davis sitting on the desk running college game day as their host.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those guys have spent time in the booth.
Right.
And I think you can see sometimes where the edges show in terms of what they're really talented. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Reese Davis probably works a little better, as a host of the show. And I think Chris
Right.
Fowler probably works a little better calling the games. But it does it is interesting, and I feel like you have to sometimes try those guys in these different roles because I think more times than not they can do both, but they're probably better at one than the other.
Yeah, I mean, we can go back to studio shows, right? Um, Many years ago, the lead studio guy for CBS was Jim Nance, and Greg Gumbel was the lead broadcaster. Game play-by-play guy. And God rest his soul, Greg was phenomenal at it. But they realized that maybe Jimmy was a better play-by-play guy, and Greg was a better, you know, studio analyst. So they flip flopped him, and Greg went on to become iconic in that role. And of course, Jim has been the consummate play-by-play guy.
Hmm.
So we do see it happen, and it will be something we're gonna keep looking at for the foreseeable future. There's no question about that. Um, let me get my tab back. France and Spain. Let's talk a little bit about that, and I'll get back to the rest of the guys before. France is really the team that everybody coming into this tournament knew was going to be good. I don't know that they knew that they were going to be this good, and they haven't trailed in any of the games they played. Um, they eliminated Sweden. They got rid of Paraguay, and of course Morocco. They scored 16 goals in the process. They conceded one goal in the knockout phase so far. 1-0 win over Paraguay. They basically just dominated. So I think that what we're looking at here is Spain is going to have to play obviously defense, and I think what we're looking for. You'd mentioned it when I was asking about from a casual fan standpoint. Sometimes just the way they work is that you're going to have to. I don't think anybody in Spain would be upset if the if the score at the end of regulation was 1-1 or nothing, or 0-0 level, and go to extra time and hopefully go to penalty kicks. Um, that's what we're seeing. We're not seeing wide open stuff, and a lot of that has to do with you don't want to get behind quick and early, and
Hmm.
I think that's what we saw with the U.S. They got behind. They didn't know what the hell they were doing after that, and all of a sudden, the game had gotten. I mean, they lost that game in the first 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and the US's defense, really on the back line more than anything. The games that I'd watched had been, I would call it lackluster. I would say they were winning probably in spite of it.
Hmm.
Um, and it showed against Belgium. Like they obviously had the own goal off the goalie, and that didn't
Hmm.
help. But their defense had been, less. I mean, it was a weakness throughout the majority of this World Cup, and it's something that when you look at France and Spain, especially, and really what Spain was able to do to Belgium coming off of
Hmm.
that performance where they did have 4 goals against the U.S. and Spain, really, really shut them down defensively. And that's just like there's different levels. I think really from the casual perspective, it's interesting seeing the different levels of defending there are along those back lines in reference to, really when the World Cup had started, what I was mainly just watching the US.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that uh, holds the U.S. back is we don't have and we never have had, to be honest, um, a definite world class striker, a guy like an Mbappe, a guy like a Lionel Messi, and of course, I mean they don't grow on trees. Never, not everybody gets them, but the funny thing is that I'll give you an example. As a kid, playing for a very long time, well into his teens, Steph Curry was like played basketball, he played soccer, and Steph was saying that you know part of the reason he's had success in the NBA is due to his footwork. which he said came from his understanding in playing soccer. So, what we need to do is get some of these guys who, they go to other sports. Maybe they play, you know, college football and then on to the pros, or college basketball and then on to the NBA. We need to start getting those guys to play, on the U.S. men's soccer team. Uh, you need that speed, you need that ability, that quick footwork, and that's something. I mean, the U.S. has got defenders, which isn't bad. The midfielders aren't bad. They just have never had somebody who is, could put the ball in the back of the net consistently.
Hmm. And people I've seen a lot of the discourse regarding youth soccer and the
Hmm.
systems in the leagues where you get these national teams
Hmm.
and how much how different it is ran in the US compared to a lot of these other nations,
Hmm.
where some of them they're paying these kids to come and be a part of these programs, and they're
Right.
developing, and they make it easier on them, whereas the US, you have such a large area that you're spanning, so your training and stuff like that isn't necessarily close, and then on top of all of that is you're required to pay to be a part of these programs, whereas other
Hmm.
countries are, almost pushing kids into it. We're requiring there's a pay barrier that is blocking the United States developmental soccer leagues.
Well, I mean, it boils down to, it's almost like NIL, right? Um, you want the best players, and if it's, if I can entice somebody who might be a better wide receiver, basketball, point guard, whatever, somebody who's got speed and that kind of foot talent, um, you know, I'm going to lose every time to a basketball or a football situation where they're going to pay me to play, versus a situation where I either have to go via the you know the travel route, where I'm playing soccer with a travel team that has me away from home 90% of the time, or I'm going to have to go into an academy where I'm going to have to pay them to teach me how to play the game.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
and it's
that's. Hmm.
it just
Go
puts
ahead.
you at a disadvantage, compared
Hmm.
compared to those other countries, and the way that they're attacking soccer. I think it speaks to the level of talent that you do have available in the country, that
Hmm.
you're still able to put a team that can make the top 16 in the World Cup out there with having the boundaries that you do have. Um, kind of the gates over youth soccer development.
If we know anything, we'll check it out for you. Um, with regard to truck driving, I appreciate you dropping by. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not that we don't have the kids playing. It's that, as you say, the things are turned upside down. I mean, even if you look over at, you know uh, Crystal Palace and Liverpool, and a number of the Premier League teams have developmental teams. Kids that are 14, 15, 16 are in their developmental programs, which they're obviously paying for.
Hmm.
And, I'm not saying that the MLS is trying not to invest, but they just don't invest.
Hmm.
So it makes it more difficult for that to work out. I mean, it's a tough sell. Let me just run down a couple quick things here. TSN in Canada got an A grade. Luke Willem and Stephen Caldwell did a really good job on calling the games. You can really see that TSN invested heavily in their on-site production, and the results of the broadcast feels very solid. They're polished. They understand the Canadian supporters, but they also understand that there's a lot of people in Canada who were rooting for other teams. So they were homers, but without being necessarily disrespectful to the other side. Over on ITV in the UK, they also got an A. I give it an A minus a little bit. because Sam Matterface and Lee Dixon um, did a really good job with England's coverage. They normally do. I mean, there's no question about it. But they do sometimes get a little bit, stale in what they feel with regard to high pressure moments. Right? They're not necessarily. They don't bring that sense of urgency that I believe John Chapman and Ally McCoist, who also was with ITV, their number two team, did a much better job than the A team, if you will, from ITV. And then finally, a B plus to the BBC, and I'm willing to maybe push that up to an A. Guy Mowbray and Alan Shearer really have done an outstanding job, and and I'll tell you, it's what has been epic about that group is, I mean, Guy Mowbray is just hilarious in his analysis of a game and going and what's going on as a play-by-play guy. He's been really fun to watch because everything with him is almost poetry. He explains things in that way. Um, so it's been really fun to watch. The BBC crew. They're not as electric as some of the others, but they're fun to watch because they um, don't oversell it. But it's kind of like when you're watching back in the day, like a Vin Scully or a Dick Enberg, guys like that. They brought poetry to the sport. They understood how to tell stories. They did it in a way that was very entertaining, and so it was what it was. And I think that the BBC has a very high bar, and I thought that they didn't always have that energy, but in the last few games they have. So I think I'm going to bump them up to an A as well. So that's the breakdown of the announcers, and we talked a little bit about France and Spain. Tomorrow, England's playing against Argentina. We'll break a little bit more of that down later, but um, man, you know, England hasn't won a World Cup since 1966, and man, that it would blow the roof off the country if they actually could get past Argentina and into that championship game.
Yeah, I think that really when you look at just based off my understanding of things, Argentina's run is they've conceded a good bit of goals to competition that is, not necessarily up to the standard that Argentina is. And
Hmm.
there's been some close matches with teams that maybe they shouldn't have had close matches with. So they're very gettable, but obviously there is probably some mental factor that goes into it for England because I know that the expectations, I think the expectations started to turn really in the last World Cup as well, maybe the last couple, and they believe that they could win again. Um, not that they ever necessarily stopped believing,
Right.
but they, you know, with how far they've been able to advance recently. And this year in particular, this feels like a very gettable Argentina squad that's going to concede some goals. Obviously, you have Bellingham and Kane. Yep, I got that right.
There you go.
And yeah, they've both been tremendous throughout the World Cup, especially Bellingham these last two games. So they have the ability to get it done, and you would think that really, with all due respect, because he's still been otherworldly fantastic, but Messi is he's not young, he's right there. At, what is it, 39?
Yeah.
So their their star player, as magical as he still can be, is not the in the primal version of himself. And
Hmm.
so this is probably going to be, a fantastic opportunity for England to, if nothing else, at least make the final.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with Argentina has been their, and this is not just their issue, but some other teams' issues. and that is the scoring the goal in stoppage time or in extra time, right? Um, they've been they've been they were down. Was it 10 minutes? They were down by a goal. They came back and scored 2 goals in 10 minutes and won the game. So they've been sloppy. You know, sloppy in Argentina. Um, the way they normally play. Um, what they've done with Messi, which is kind of interesting, is they haven't asked him to do a lot of running. You'll watch him, and he'll kind of like stroll from from one part of the pitch to the other. Doesn't get on the other side of the midfield stripe much on that side, but once he comes into the well, I mean, this is Messi. If you watch him, even in the in the MLS with Inter Miami, what Messi does um, is once the ball crosses the midfield stripe and they get the ball to him, he suddenly has that burst of speed in large part because he hasn't been running back and forth. He just he waits for the moment that as a 39-year-old you would expect. Okay, now I get a burst from him, and all the game long you've been playing around, going, okay, he's just walking past me. All of a sudden he's way past me, and I think that and the fact that he's got such a magical touch inside the box. I mean, there's just the guy is just ridiculous. I mean, his footwork inside the box is just crazy. Um, but that being said, you brought his name up. If there is a player who had a breakout, World Cup, it's got to be Jude Bellingham. I mean, my God, that 23-year-old kid has just been phenomenal, and
Hmm.
the way he has just taken over games. And now he and Harry Kane are tied for goals as we get to the Golden Boot situation, and they're one behind Messi and I believe Mbappe as well. So, you know, we've got the goal scorers in this game. I mean, there's no question about it. You got Messi, you got Kane. You've got of course, we talked about Mbappe over in France, and Jude Bellingham. And so there's a lot. Do I expect high scoring games? No, not at all. But I do expect that the stars will, which has been the interesting part, and you mentioned it earlier. The stars have actually come out. They really have done well when they had to, and that's been, if there's been one thing that you can say about this World Cup, and that is that nobody's you know even Cristiano Ronaldo, when Portugal was in it, Ronaldo was played outstanding. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, it's been the stars have come out. And that isn't always the case in championship play.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, you can even go to Norway, who got eliminated in Holland,
Hmm.
and how well he played
Sure.
throughout this World Cup because he played fantastically as well.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it has boiled down. I think in terms of a match that you can sell to Americans, because I think this
Hmm.
is it's no hidden secret here,
Hmm.
state secret, that soccer is not the most popular sport throughout the
Hmm.
United States of America. But having England and having Messi and having that be one of your semifinal matchups
Hmm.
in America, it feels like as good as you're going to get in terms of getting just a general populace to sit down and watch the game, because it's England, and at this point, England has they're established. They have their established stars as well to go along with Messi and Argentina, and
Hmm.
so I think it resonates the best with the general populace of America in terms of viewership for that game.
I'm going to do something here, and I might offend people, and I'm sorry if I do. Uh, you know, back when I was doing the NASL games, when Pele and Giorgio Canaglia and Franz Beckenbauer were on the Cosmos, and Rodney Marsh and Derek Smethurst and those guys were on the Rowdies. Ray Hudson was in Fort Lauderdale. We had super teams out on the West Coast and at Vancouver and Seattle and Portland. You know, it's not that Americans don't like soccer. It's that Americans are used to the highest level of soccer or any sport. You know, people come here to play baseball because it's the best. People come here to play basketball because it's the best. People, football. There are people who come here and play football, but not as much from that transfer situation. Same as in hockey. You got a lot of Eastern Europeans and Russians and people from throughout the world coming to play the NHL. We you know Messi sells out stadiums, so
Mhm.
it's not that we don't support soccer in this country. It's we want the best of the best. I mean, there's no if you look at the numbers, ratings wise, of the Premier League and the Champions League, I mean, they're good. They're solid. We're getting NFL numbers on the World Cup.
Mhm.
So I think that it's not that Americans do not like soccer. It's Americans don't like it, just like anything else. You want to see the best, and I'm not paying to go watch a game. And again, no shade on the MLS. Don't start sending letters here. No shade on the MLS, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to go and pay to sit there and watch, um, you know, AAA baseball, and that's what we're. I mean, until the MLS figures out how to get more, stars in their later years, like they've done with Messi, like they
Mhm.
did with Beckham when Beckham came up.
Zlatan.
Sorry,
I said Zlatan.
yeah,
He came over and
yeah,
played in LA for a couple years
yeah,
after the prime of his career.
right. I mean, Neymar would be a good get if they could pull him out. Off. Some of these guys go to Saudi Arabia and play because they're just paying them ridiculous amounts of money. But
Yeah.
I think what Messi found out is, you know what, I can go over there. I don't have to be the star. I am the star, but I don't have to be. All I
Mhm.
have to do is show up and score, and I don't have to play defense. They'll take care of that. And he's got a good young core of American players around him, and so I do think that if we could start that trend, you know, I do understand what Don Garber's trying to do by expand. You know, we have way too many franchises in the MLS.
Mhm.
And I do believe that what we've got to do is start to invest in bringing some players from overseas here to play, so that fans can, you know it's one thing if you go and watch. I mean, there are places where Messi goes in. They have the regular stadium, the team stadium, and then when Messi comes to town, they go to the NFL type stadium because they can't sell. They got to sell every ticket they can. There's if all he did was play in some of these situations just in MLS stadiums, they wouldn't be able to sell as many tickets as they possibly can.
Mhm.
And I think that you look at Inter Miami, and this is and I know this. I'm about to say something which really isn't clearing a high bar here, but Messi in the Inter Miami outdraw the Marlins, you know, by a count of at least double what the Marlins bring in. So
Yeah.
so in Miami, it's a happening. Why? Because you know Messi's jersey in the United States, Messi's jersey is one of the top three selling jerseys in the country.
Yeah. And you also have it down in Miami. You obviously have that Hispanic influence, probably
Sure.
stronger than any other
Mhm.
major city in America. But even I would say that granted their relative lack of success. the
Hmm.
Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United, I think, have a very similar fan draw in terms of how many people are actually in the stadium for the game.
Yeah, they have.
Um, and so that proves, success, the success of the league, or maybe that's more of an indictment on how the Falcons have played over the past 5 years.
Yeah,
Um, but it
always a little
shows,
of each. Yeah.
yeah, it does show that when you build something successful, because in Atlanta, soccer has been successful,
Hmm.
but it is predicated on there is a strong Hispanic presence in the state of Georgia, and
Hmm.
that matters. That is something that I think directly correlates to having strong attendance in the MLS. Is, what is the makeup of your population that is Hispanic? I really do.
Well, I think, look, back in again going back to the NASL, the one of the things that George Strawbridge, who was the owner of the Rowdies, did. I mean, the Cosmos had the international super team, right? They had Pele, they had Giorgio Canaglia from Italy, they had Franz Beckenbauer from Germany. They had the United Nations of great players. Um, what the Tampa Bay did with the Rowdies is they went and got a bunch of English speaking players from the Premier League, from uh, um, South Africa's best league, um, some Canadians, some Australians, and they put them all together. And the team name, the Rowdies, was synonymous with what these guys did on and off the field. I mean, what I mean, you and I have covered sports for a while. Can you imagine after a game where 40,000 people has seen you play that you're going to a restaurant announcing you're going to the restaurant, and when the restaurants, when the game's over, the players walk into the restaurant, sit down, and just hang out and just have a hell of a time, drinking the night away with the fans.
Yeah, no, that isn't something that happens, at all ever in America, like whatsoever. They walk in, they'll have their entourage and
Right.
stuff like that.
And they'll
But
be ushered into a room, and you'll
yeah,
never see them again.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that you seldom, if ever, see it after a game. I mean,
Well,
that's
I think the only exception that you have to something like that is
Mhm.
of age college athletes. After this, I think this applies more to football players.
Mhm.
Is they'll go out and they'll still, those guys will go out and they'll go to the bars, if
Sure,
they're at home and they want a big game.
sure.
That's probably the closest that you're going to get
That's
to it
fair.
in
Yeah, that's
sense.
fair. I remember when Florida won the SEC championship, and they came home and they celebrated, in their in the in a bar that they all liked, and the next morning, um, the guy who ran the bar called Spurrier up and said, "By the way, you guys left the SEC trophy here at the bar." So I think they might have had a little too much fun that night, but yeah, I mean it's yeah, sure. I mean, from a college standpoint, it's a whole different vibe. But I do think that the closest thing in this country to that kind of camaraderie, if you will, with the fans is really the NHL. The guys with the NHL are really accessible, and they like to be around the fans, and they're not as protective as is the NBA and the and Major League Baseball and the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because, again, it just feels like they've done. Whether you consider this to be a good thing or a bad thing, I think the players might consider it to be a good thing, but they've kind of built a wall between the players and the fans,
Right.
um, in all of those leagues.
Yeah. It's sad. It's understandable in many cases, but it's also sad in many cases. But I do believe, to put a button on this before we move on to another topic, I do believe that. that without question that soccer will sell in this country if we get more of the elite players there, and the elite players are going to make our team better.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn from the best. I got a really good Atlanta Braves story for you, and this
Okay.
will give people a little idea um, of how people are very smart at what they do. Greg Maddox was in a game where he was playing Houston, and that was back when Houston was in the National League. And the Braves were up 9-0, and they were facing he was facing Jeff Bagwell. And for those who don't know, Jeff Bagwell was always a tough guy to get out anyway. So he he um, Greg Maddox, the pitcher, uh, threw him three um, three sliders, and two of them he missed, and one he fouled off. Then he threw a fastball, and he fouled that off. And they threw him another slider and hit it for a home run. And the catcher comes out to talk to him and says, we could have gotten him out with a high fastball. He goes, I understand. He said, I let him hit it. I threw him that pitch. He goes, what do you mean you threw him that pitch? He goes, I threw him. I wanted him to get a hit. And he said, why? And he says, because we're going to face him in the playoffs, and I'm going to not throw that pitch.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I'm setting him up for the playoffs. We're up nine. We're not 9-1 now. What did that do? Didn't hurt anything.
No.
But that kind of leadership and thinking ahead is what the U.S. soccer community needs. Is a
Yeah.
Lionel Messi showing you, you know, it. I know we see a lot of Messi, and he speaks Portuguese and he speaks Spanish. He speaks English pretty well, to be honest. Um, but oftentimes, what you don't want to you don't want to say something and it come out in the wrong context. So that's why you use interpreters. Same thing with with many of the Japanese players and players from Asia in baseball. So I think that Messi, when he does in practice, he's showing everybody on the team how to get better. And I think for him, that's also something he enjoys. He enjoys the fact that he is a coach on the field, if you will. And I think that kind of thing speaks volumes. Well, we're going to take one more shot here at another international sport, and that is tonight's Major League Baseball All Star game. And you know, it means something to have an All Star game most of the time, and Major League Baseball probably has the one that means the most. Um, are you looking forward to it, or are you just kind of like, okay, well, it's nice? They, I'm not overwhelmed by it. I'm going to take the night off and watch a movie or something. Or are you going to tune in the All Star game?
I'll probably watch. I mean, the All Star game just comes at a bad time because I'm a fan of a team that didn't want the break. Um, but it's definitely of the major sports, in the United States. It does the All Star festivities the best. Like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the red carpet and the home run derby. Like yeah, they have like this new, what is it? They've started like this home run derby X or whatever that is that they've like like the celebrity home run derby or whatever
Right.
they do with that. And that's not, that doesn't bring in anything, but their futures game is solid. It's played at a relatively inopportune time because it's played in like the middle of the day 3 days prior
Mm-hmm.
while baseball is going on, and they're also holding their draft. And
Right.
so they kind of jumble their calendar up. But in terms of the All-Star game itself, it feels like it is the one that it feels like the sport. The NBA doesn't feel like like I'm watching an NBA basketball game. The NFL is now flag football, so it's
Right.
literally a completely different version of the same sport, but it's not what you're watching, week in and week out. This is still the game. The only difference with this game is that, if your favorite player starts, guess what? He's probably only getting like 3 innings. Like you're not getting a full nine out of him. And
Right.
that's really your biggest difference, in comparison of the two. But it's something that I enjoy. It's something that I like, and I
Mhm.
will say, being a Red Sox guy, that Sonny Gray, the Red Sox starter, absolute snub. It is a joke that he is not in Philadelphia. The guy is 11-1 with a 2.4 ERA, and he's been fantastic this season.
Mhm.
So it's they Cam Schlittler needed a replacement. They have not given a replacement. I guess they won't give a replacement for him since he said that he's not going to pitch in the game.
Mhm.
Um, he deserved to be there, and it's a bit of a joke that he's not.
What was it? Was it Zach Wheeler? It was one of the Philly pitchers
Yeah,
that decided, told the league, um, you're just adding me at the last minute. Thanks, but no thanks.
yeah, and there's a certain aspect of fan voting does fail Major League
Mhm.
Baseball in the process of dictating their All Star game
Right.
because it has such an overwhelming say. I mean, listen, I love Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as
Yeah.
much as the next guy. He is a really good face for the sport of
Mhm.
baseball. He's not been an All Star this year, and he was first place
Mhm.
on the ballot. Like it hasn't been close. I think he's hit like four. No, I think it's 6 home runs. He's hit 6 home runs. Nick Kurtz, Ben Rice, Wilson Contreras, um, all three of them ended up getting named to the All Star team. All three of them deserved being All Stars over, over Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But at
Mhm.
one point, he did have that. He did get that nod, and that is an accolade that
Mhm.
he has now that he was an All Star this year in a season where it's not been a horrible season, but hitting 280 with 6 home runs and like 40 some odd RBIs, it's not an All Star year. It's a solid year. It's not a bad year,
Right.
but it's not an All Star year.
Yeah, and I think that you know players have a right to be upset if they feel they've been disrespected,
Yeah,
and there's no reason why Sonny Gray isn't on that team.
and
Hell, there's no reason why Sonny Gray isn't starting for that team.
yeah, I think, and you may correct me if I'm wrong here, because I think I may be, but they don't vote. Fans don't vote on the pitchers, do they?
No, that's a
Yeah.
manager's choice.
So that's on Major League Baseball. That's on them.
Hmm.
So when you're Zach Wheeler and you're declining that invitation,
Hmm.
it shouldn't have gotten that far. The same way that
Right.
Sonny Gray shouldn't have gotten this. It shouldn't
Right.
have gotten to this point either. Like I love Ranger Suarez. Ranger Suarez has had
Hmm.
a fantastic year for the Boston Red Sox, and
Hmm.
he has been really good for us.
Right.
He's not been better than Sonny Gray though. Like that's what's confusing is you have guys on
Hmm.
his own team that he has played better than that were named
Hmm.
all stars and
Right.
didn't make it over him or did
Yeah,
make it over him.
it's crazy. Well, we'll watch it tonight, and we'll hopefully have a chance to enjoy it. Soccer today, killer, semi. France against Spain. That game is 3 o'clock Eastern time here in the United States. It's prime time, 8 o'clock for those of you over in the UK. Those of you in France and the rest of the continent over there, you're getting it at 9 o'clock. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait to the wee hours of the morning to get the games. And I know that there's a lot of people and a lot of bars over both in the UK and throughout Europe that are breathing a sigh of relief that they don't have to stay open till 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning because we're playing games at 11 o'clock Eastern time here in the United States. So we are going to allow you to watch it at a reasonably solid time. It's a kind of interesting for Fox. They've got quite the doubleheader today. They're going to have France and Spain, and then go right out of that game right into the All-Star game. So it's a big day for the guys at Fox Sports, and we'll see how that plays out. But enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoy as well, and we will see you back here tomorrow. There's going to be we talked a little bit about it today with tomorrow's England versus Argentina game, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. And we hope that you come back tomorrow. Enjoy us at noon. Okay, everybody, have a lovely day. Ta-da!